my name is Rico Surya Wirawan. So today I will giving my understanding of the phonology. Now the topic is about the phonology in the consonant part. So before I start what is the phonology and the rest of the information about it, so I will say the every person in this world in the every individual has a different way to speak, so like a different pronunciation. For example, like piece of cake and piece of cake, so it's totally different between the first example and the second example. The first example like read word one by one. For the other example is just like speak all word together simultaneously and in a natural way, I'm sorry. So that's the different pronunciation, just a little bit explanation example, and we move to the explanation of the phonology itself. So phonology in the study of linguistic is the study of the speech sound. It means how the sound is produced by the human. Like for example, like my explanation before, every individual has their own speech, has their own sound to produce something. Like for example, like to say scholarship, maybe the scholarship in my sound is sounds like that, but different with my other friend or with the other people, maybe they have another sounds or attractive sound. That's why I say the every individual has their own speech to produce a sound. So that's the explanation. What is the phonology? Is the study of the speech sound, how the human produce their sounds to create a word before they speak it out loud. And it's really important to before we produce the I'm sorry before we speak something important, let's not to get too far, like to think about the sentences, just a word. No, just try to think about the vocal and consonant. Just a one letter you say, you speak it out loud. You must know how the articulation, or in other words is your articulation or vocal tract, like your mouth, tongue, and teeth and lips. Those are the vocal tract of your how the sounds you produce before you speak it out loud. Before, for example, like before you want to say T, K, P, and S, it must be there's something, a special place when you say those words. Like for example, like a letter K, you have to suppress uh, your lungs, and in your throat you have to suppress that and become k, k. So you don't have to use your lips, because in your lips there is a few letter there is in your lip, like you is when you say p, p, that's for p in your lips and k in your throat. So there's how the human vocal tract produce our sounds. So that's the basically simple explanation and the example of the how the human produce our sounds. And then for there are five important articulation of function in our when we say something important. Like for example, like we use handshake, palm orientation, movement, location, and also the last is our expression or non uh, manual sign. So the first one is why I say hand shape. Hand shape is like your hand when we say something like hand. head, ear, eye, nose, mouth. And then for the palm orientation, it more like you offering something. This is the book, this is the pen. So that's the palm orientation, just a little bit explanation. And for the movement, like movement, you say like those book, that book, this is delicious. So that's the movement. And for the location is like you assign but attractive sign, but actually this is not, don't have any connection with the phonology. But yes, still I will explain it, just briefly explain. Just for example, like your forehead is your mom, your nose is your dad, and your throat is your sister or brother. So that's the basically example. But actually this gonna kind of out of the topic of the phonology, but yes, still. And for the expression or non-sign movement or non-manual sign, is like you express something, like your word. Like for example, like if you don't agree, you just use your expression don't agree, just like maybe your move your eyelash and just don't say something, like people start to understand you, what you want to be, what you want, your what do you mean, are you agree or not. So that's the basically the briefly explanation of the important articulation of the phonology. And for the, I just want to add some information between consonant and vocal. Vocal is A, I, E, O, U, and the consonant is like K, P, P, S, Z. There's a totally different how our mouth to speak them out loud. Like in such way, in some way, the consonant, when we say consonant, our mouth is slightly closed, like not all closed, just slightly closed, like p, k, just totally, really slightly closed, not closed at all, but not open. Just I think it's more like closed, but not really close your mouth. But in different between the vocal you slightly open your mouth and let it open while you still use that word. Like for example, an apple. So an apple is an A and A. A in the first letter and the A is the last letter. So you still let your mouth open from the beginning. You start to say that word until the end, until end of the word. So that's the example between the consonant and the vocals. And that's the first difference. And the second difference is the plosive. There is some word is the voiceless and the some word is the voice. Yes, the voice is, you already know, is the all the vowels, and for the voiceless is all the, not all the consonant, maybe just a few word, just like just few word of the consonant itself. For example, like z, z, like you produce, just like you put your upper tongue in your upper teeth and say something like that. And the word Z don't have a sound, so that's why we call that a plosive voiceless. So that's, I think that I can explain is the difference between the vocal and consonant, how our mouth to say and how our articulation is produced them, and between the different between the plosive voiceless and the plosive voice. So I think that's all of my understanding. I hope Mr. Putra get it, understand, and if I make a mistake or my grammar is wrong or my explanation it's not quite good enough for for Mr. Putra and all of my viewer, I do my apologies. And for the last word I say Om Santi 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 Om.